tonight. Tonight we'll be presenting Fintech, Finance and Technology, presented by Monica, Nina, my colleague, and Angelica Large. We will know what is Fintech, the goals of Fintech, how it has changed our lives, and we will discover that we've been using Fintech in our daily life without knowing it. First of all, we're going to start with defining what is Fintech. Fintech is a compound term from the words of finance and technology. It defines all financial services companies that make use of the latest technological innovations to provide products, services, and business models, covering mainly in 4 large business areas: cashless payments and transactions, management of personal finance, consultancy of marketing platforms for investors, as well as new approaches to financing and granting credits. Services such as digital banking, online credits, currency exchange for any part of the world, through the web or digital payments. In definite terms, Fintech will be all the products or services that share the technology and money. Fintech areas of operations. Fintech startups, the idea of starting up a business which revolves around Fintech, financial technologies, implies Fintech startups. And as we could see on the illustration on this slide. Fintech is a revolution. The way we used to do finance, in other words, it is revolutionary competing with the traditional financial industry. Traditionally, if you wanted to start a new business, you will have to go to the bank or investors for a loan in order to collect credit card payments. So any of us will have to acquire expensive equipment, set up a Visa or MasterCard account. We concurred in high expenses. Today, you could start with a great idea of product that you not have yet actualized and gather willing investors through a crowdfunding page, or collect credit card payments, or send money payment directly from your smartphone with minimum cost. Crowdfunding, we could mention one of the companies, GoFundMe, Kickstarter, blockchain, cryptocurrency, Coinbase, Gemini, mobile payments, as many of us have used, Apple Pay, Alibaba, InsurTech such as Lemonade, robo-advising stock trading such as Vanguard that many of us are very familiar with, Robinhood, and budgeting apps such as Mint. What Fintech covers? There are many different areas that Fintech covers. Many of us, I just mentioned a few, but going over, that includes lending, blockchain, crypto, regulatory compliance, personal finance, payments, billing, insurance, capital markets, wealth management, money transfers, mortgage, and real estate. Investment in Fintech from 2010 through 2022. The total value, as the illustration shows, based on a Statista, the total value of investment into Fintech companies worldwide increased dramatically between the years of 2010 and 2019, when it reached $215.1 billion. In 2020, however, Fintech companies saw investments drop by more than 1/3, reaching a value of $127.7 billion US, but the investment value increased again into 2021 up to $226.5 billion. Fintech globally investments. As we could see, the value of investment in Fintech globally from the first quarter of 2014 to the second quarter of 2022 in billion dollars. The quarterly worldwide value of investment in Fintech peaked during the third quarter of 2019, as we could see in the illustration, $144.9 billion, with a deal value of almost $145 billion US. The value refers to both venture capital, private equity, and M&A investments. In the second quarter of 2022, the investment value stood up at $34 billion US, the lowest since the third quarter of 2020. Leading Fintech unicorns. Leading fintech unicorns worldwide in the term of market value in the second quarter of 2022. In the second quarter, as we could see in this graph, Stripe was the most valuable fintech unicorn worldwide with a market value of 95 billion US dollars. Swedish online financial services provide Klarna ranked the second with a market value of 45.6 billion US dollars. Why are these changes happening now? Together with the financial crisis back, as many of us remember, 2008 and the COVID pandemic banks have slowed down drastically in their innovation abilities due in part to the new rules, fines, and regulations imposed on them by the government, and greatly imparted by the changes in expectations of customers. For example, the iPhones and the GPS Ubers have facilitated these transactions to such a level of simplicity that is really almost impossible to compete with. Fintech offers a totally new and convenient customer experience. That's all we are looking for, something convenient and faster and easier for all of us. And banks cannot produce in the traditional way. In simple terms, customers have to go to the banks and abide by the bank's rules and limitations, while Fintech goes to and adapts to the customer's expectations with the new technologies. The pros and cons of working with Fintech. As any projects, anything we do always have the pros and cons. Let's review the pros of Fintech. Fintech allows to facilitate access to features and financial advantages to real people in real world, especially in places that do not have the infrastructure available in developed countries, like in Africa. There are many countries in Asia. Rather than being a small part of the financial organization, for example, working a single agent at a desk in a large organization. There is a less restrictive and structured environment to work. One does not have to have a financial degrees to work on a fintech, at least not necessarily, but there are a lot of opportunities nowadays. And some of the cons of fintech are, one is building from scratch that comes with a lot of pressure. Like any company that you could create, it is a lot of pressure with high stress. Like any startup, the process of creation is not always as easy as it might seem. The work environment may not be one of the tools and amenities at disposal within a regular financial institution or company. And it is very challenging to acquire the necessary licensing for these types of companies because of its being an enterprise touching the financial product industry. Working towards such goal requires long working hours and racing to the next stage with a standard financial organization. Now, my colleague, Ms. Nina, will continue.
Thank you. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. So in fintech, we have here, I'm showing you in the picture, the top 250 companies of 2022. So as Angelica has mentioned, fintech services exist in our everyday apps and services that we use. Some examples are like Venmo and Zelle, right? Payment services we use to pay bills, transfer money to friends or families, or use it just simply as a contactless payment method. Other services that we use, like for investing, probably like Robinhood, SoFi, Acorns, and Wealthfront. And then in this picture, I hope you can see all the companies there, but about 64% of the top fintech companies are B2B, and then the remaining are B2C, business to customer. And over half of the companies are headquartered in the US. And in terms of categories, we have the top companies are payment processing and networks with 33, equaling 13%, insurance with 25, cryptocurrency with 24, core banking and infrastructure with 19, and retail investing and wealth management with 17. And so when we talk about fintech expansion and the growth, right, and the future, so right now there are now 235 total fintech unicorns or private fintech companies worth more than $1 billion around the world. It's expected to grow to 936.51 billion by 2030 at a CAGR of 26.2 during the forecasted period of 2022 through 2030. And so also to highlight, in the fourth quarter of 2021, the US led the world in fintech funding, followed by Asia, Europe, and Latin America in that order. And if we want to talk about how many unicorns are in Asia, there's about 48 fintech unicorns, and then in Europe there's 42, and in Latin America there's 14. And then so obviously like there's a lot of competition happening in the fintech industry, and so in order for companies to stay in the top and produce and be profitable, they always want to have to be like adopting to new strategies such as product innovations, mergers, acquisitions, recent developments, and kind of investigating what else is happening, right? Kind of staying in the mix of everything. And I really love this example with EasyPay. They're a fintech startup that focuses on improving the accessibility of financial sectors in rural areas. So they are reaching out to urban populations that don't have the availability to access, they don't have availability to access to rural households, and that primarily depend on private money lenders. So they are using the technology that they built to reach out to these households in primarily in India. So awesome, awesome strategy that they have. And then, of course, there's challenges. Not going to go through all of them, but I mean, data security is pretty, plain and simple when you hear it. Like, I mean, a lot of people either they have, their old ways of how they work when they go to banking. I know some people who still have the banking book that shows all your money transactions, and it's not outdated, it's still in the mix. And then there's people, a lot of millennials and Gen Z, like they're okay with using their banking from the app, like they have trust and they're comfortable with the software, right? And that's because there is a double verification access, they have data encryption, there's real-time alerts and notifications happening. But then there's also the other challenges are you're also going to deal with the government when it comes to finance. So before creating any app or software, making sure that you're going through the compliances of all through the legal compliances. I'm sorry, and if you're not sure, reaching out to a legal consultant to give you advice, right? And then another big one that I was really curious about was like the big data and AI integration. This is, made like almost all organizations have this, right? And so using big data, organizations can collect personal information about users, social status, the financial behavior, habits, and in-app activity. And it can be a little bit not what a user wants to know, like, hey, I know the activity that you're doing, but it also gives a better use of like how the app is being used and how they can better accommodate this software to the consumer. So it has its pros and cons for sure. All right, last but not least, I know Angelica, talked a lot about investing, but I kind of wanted to just point out one of the top profitable investors, and that is Tiger Global. They are New York based, and they are the most profitable investors in 2022 in fintech. They have been holding down more than $1 billion in investments, and which includes fintech startups. And so, as you can see here, we have ChargeBee, Checkout.com, RealVault, and TrueLayer. And then I kind of listed out the amount of investment that they've contributed, and then the outcome has been very positive for all these companies. So this is just a few. There is a big list that I found, but that is it. And then we have our references here and additional references. But that's it. I don't know how to pause it.